Hi everybody, it's Jenny. I'm coming to you with an update. I am in P3 officially right now. And 2 days ago didn't do so great with my eating, but since then I have cooked up a bunch of chicken. I took 11 chicken breasts and put them into a crock pot with 2 packages of taco seasoning, about a quarter of a cup of water, and probably 40 or 50 cherry tomatoes that I cut into quarters in there. And then as it kept cooking, I just kept shredding the chicken. So it is now shredded chicken that I can put back on my tortillas, and it's something that I really enjoy. And it doesn't feel P2 to me, and it doesn't feel P3. It doesn't feel like I'm on a diet. I really enjoy it. And I just put it on a tortilla with a little bit of mozzarella cheese, and which is P3 approved. Finally, I can say I had the mozzarella cheese and not feel guilty about it when I share that. Um, and then some lettuce on top of it, and no salad dressing. So, I'm going to read a little bit more about P3 because I started second guessing myself yesterday. Oh, so how did I do? So, I lost a pound today, but I gained a pound the day before. I basically, for the past 2 days, haven't gained or lost anything. Which is a typical time for me anyway. So, anyway, I'm just happy that all in all, I'm about the same as I was. I mean, maybe point something up. I have to double check. I closed out my numbers. But since 2 days ago I didn't eat great, that was kind of, it was just sort of not a good day. And we don't have to go into details. But I mean, it wasn't terrible. I mean, it's just like a lot going on, and I just kind of found myself picking, and then I realized if I don't eat more protein and stay away from carbs, this is what's going to happen, and I'm going to fall back into this pattern. So that's why I made myself make that chicken yesterday, and then I ate it. And I did have 2 wraps full of that chicken with mozzarella cheese, and then later on had a small bowl of just the chicken. So I ate a decent amount of food. So I was happy to get on the scale and see that it said minus zero point 0.1 because it's been a couple days since I've had a bowel movement as well. Um, and it just feels heavy. That chicken just feels heavy when you put it in, when you're lifting it. Anyway, my body's using it, and we'll keep going. So I was reading a little bit more about P3, and I wanted to specifically talk about carbs because I remember reading in the protocol yesterday, 2 days ago. I don't think yesterday I did a video. So my last video 2 days ago was that you needed to avoid sugars and starches. And so then I just like substituted the word starch for carbs to basically stay away from carbs. And then I thought, well, isn't a carb a starch? It is a starch. So why are we saying starches? Why aren't we just saying carbs? Um, and what exactly are starches? Because a sugar is a carb too. So why do they separate the word sugar out? So I thought I'd just talk about it a little bit today. And let me start off by reading the protocol to you. Something's in my eye. I apologize. I think it's a cat hair. Okay. Um, and this is what it says. All right. Concluding a course. When the 3 days of dieting after the last dose are over, the patients are told that they may now eat anything they please except sugar and starch, provided they faithfully observe one simple rule. This rule is that they must have their own portable bathroom scale always handy, particularly when traveling. They must, without fail, weigh themselves every morning as they get out of bed, having first emptied their bladder. If they are in the habit of having breakfast in bed, they must weigh in before breakfast. It takes about 3 weeks before the weight reached at the end of the treatment becomes stable, i.e., does not show violent fluctuations after an occasional excess. During this period, patients must realize that the so called carbohydrates, that is, sugar, rice, bread, potatoes, pastries, etc., are by far the most dangerous. If no carbohydrates whatsoever are eaten, fats can be indulged in somewhat more liberally, and even small quantities of alcohol, such as a glass of wine with meals, does no harm. But as soon as fats and starch are combined, things are very liable to get out of hand. This has to be observed very carefully during the first 3 weeks after the treatment is ended, otherwise, disappointments are almost sure to occur. Okay, so we talked about this before, and it said, first of all, at the beginning of this, I said when the 3 days of dieting after the last dose are over, the patients are told that this is what they can now eat. That is because when you're done with P2, you stop taking the drops, but it's still in your system, so you have another 2 days. According to this, is 3 days, but I think you count that first day ending. Anyway, it's about anywhere from 2 to 3 days. You know yourself. If you're really starting to get hungry, it means you need to eat more. So basically, you're staying on the 500 calorie protocol after you get off HCG for at least 1 to 2 days. Is what I found. A solid whole day into the next day, which would be day two, I guess, then automatically. And then sometimes that day as well. And if you start to feel hunger, then that's an indication that you need to increase your calorie intake, and the HCG is getting out of your bloodstream. So that's all it is. It's just a matter of it takes a while for HCG to completely get out of your blood system. All right. Um, and then it said these so-called carbohydrates. So they kind of talks about carbohydrates, but then he talks about starches and sugars. So I thought I would just go and kind of break it down and explain it to you, because I kind of also went, well, a starch is a carbohydrate and a sugar is a carbohydrate. So why don't we just say avoid carbohydrates? And then, so I kind of looked it up and I saw it broken down in the three categories, and I thought this would be good to explain to you too, because maybe you needed a refresher just as me, because I like read it and went, oh right, that's why. All right, so let me read what I found on carbohydrates. And of course, there are three types of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates can be broken down into three different categories: sugars, starches, and fiber. Each is different and equally important. All right, let's start with sugar. Sugars are found in foods such as fruits, vegetables, and dairy. It is worth noting that there are some foods with sugar added to them, like desserts, processed foods, sodas. Okay, so all those sugars are something can't have for 3 weeks afterwards. All right, which I find interesting because it lists fruits and vegetables as a sugar. We'll talk about that a little bit more in detail tomorrow, that we're going to go into the specifics of which vegetables are good and which ones are not so good, and which fruits are good and which ones are not so good. In this breakdown, according to this person online, they just lump it all together as sugar, which I think is a little extreme to put all vegetables as a sugar. Mm-mm. I would think most of them would fall more under fiber than sugar, but anyway. So that's sugars. That's one type of carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are also starches. Starches include potatoes, peas, corn, grains, breads, pasta, rice. Those are all your starches. Starches are an absolute no-no, sadly, because corn, peas, and potatoes are my three favorite vegetables, which a lot of people say you can't even call it a vegetable, you have to call it a starch, but I don't know. Anyway, tomato. Tomatoes and tomatoes are okay on this diet. Um, so those are starches. So no sugars, according to the breakdown how they explain it here. Fruits, vegetables, and dairy, as well as all the desserts where they add any kind of refined sugar or brown sugar, any kind of sugars into it. Not good. I mean all sugars. That includes maple syrup. So if you're doing something like I can't remember the name of the diet. It's not keto. Shoot. It's a single word like that. I have a girlfriend that's on this diet for health reasons. Anyway, it's a diet where everything has to be in its purest form. And it's basically no carbs, no carbohydrates in that. But you can have sugars that are like from maple syrup, um, kind of naturally occurring um, sugars. Can't think of the name of that diet. If you can think of it, write it down below. That's going to drive me nuts. Okay. The third kind of carbohydrate is fiber. Fiber is found in a variety of foods, but the main sources include vegetables, beans, fruits, and whole grains. They keep you full, thus preventing overeating and can aid in weight loss. All right, I'm going to just read on just a little bit onto what they say. This may seem confusing because whole grains would fall under the starch category, but grains contain a lot of fiber. So, where they may be a starch food source, they have a lot of fiber and would be considered a healthy starch. There are many foods that fall under the starch/fiber category, but just focus on eating whole grains when eating starches, and you will consume a lot of your fiber. Non-starchy vegetables are top-notch carbohydrates to consume. Not only do vegetables have a ton of fiber, they also have very little carbohydrate content per serving, so it is very important to know your serving sizes. All right, so it goes into serving sizes and that. Okay. Um, Now we're supposed to avoid starch. This is not a HCG protocol information. This is just information online, and it's not WebMD, but something like that, where it's just talking about and explaining what carbohydrates are. All right, so we now know that there's three types of carbohydrates. There are a fiber, sugar, and starches. Okay, the fiber, good stuff. Starches and sugars are what Dr. Simeon said to stay away from. Although it's going to be hard to find fiber without finding starch in it. So I feel like, why didn't he just say carbohydrates in general? And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. I've done a little bit more deep diving. I couldn't find anything in the protocol where he had specifics, like a breakdown in the original protocol. There's all kinds of stuff out there. So I am going to pull from other sources that I feel are reliable and that I kind of see where they're coming from, especially ones that are posted by medical professionals. Because we've also, let's face it, learned since the 1960s a little bit more about diet and a little bit more about how our body processes things. So to find something current from a medical professional about what is P3 appropriate and P3 friendly, I think would be beneficial. We'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow, but that's all I have for today. So there you go. The difference between a carbohydrate and a starch. We broke it down. A starch is a carbohydrate, but a carbohydrate's not necessarily a starch. This is what we learned. All right, that's all for today, and I'm going to try to stay the course. I'm very excited to see after 1 week on P3 where I am. Weighing in every day, I guess it's kind of like P2. It just has this variability that can be a little frustrating for somebody like me whose weight does fluctuate a lot from day to day, even within the course of a day. But I'm still doing it. I'm still doing it. I'm weighing in every day and I'm documenting it. But I think the most important number to share is, where am I after a week? Did I gain any weight on P3 after a week? Because you're supposed to maintain. I want to lose. But if I maintain, that would be good. If I could do 3 weeks of maintaining and then jump back into well, I should do more than 3 weeks. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see. We'll discuss. We'll talk about it. We'll see what comes up in the next couple of weeks. But thank you, a lot of you, for sharing your stories with me and where you are on the journey. It just makes me feel like I'm not alone just talking to a computer screen, that there's actually somebody listening and somebody going along. And it's just encouraging to hear all your stories. I mean, somebody even posted that they are going to start, they've always done the HCG, a synthetic hormone, as I do in the drops, but they worked at a pharmacy for over 30 years and are able to figure out how to take pure HCG and put it into a liquid form so that they can do it orally and not have to inject it, which I think is fascinating. So I'm like, keep me apprised. I'm also curious to know results that people have on the synthetic hormone versus the pure hormone, and see if there's a difference. I would think that there would be a difference. I'm just too needle shy to want to stab myself every day with a needle. Just, and it feels too medical to me. It just feels like I don't have the proper training to do that. I just feel like it's a step beyond where I am comfortable. But I'd love to hear the results, because I guess I could be swayed if there's major changes. All right, that's all for now. You take care. I'm rambling now. I'll see you hopefully tomorrow, if not in a couple days. And good luck on your diet. Stick with the program and let me know how you're doing. I'd love to hear updates. And share any P3 recipes that you have with me. If I find something great, I'll share it with you as well. I'm going to start looking into P3 desserts because that's like the one thing that makes me feel like I'm really in P3 and not truly dieting, is knowing that I can have something sweet afterwards. So I'm going to look into options um, with almond flour, maybe to make some sort of muffins, or I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to look into it. Chocolate is my favorite, but that just gets tricky to figure out a way to. I've made recipes in the past with chocolate, like just using cocoa powder, and then you add artificial sweeteners with it, and that, and somehow I can never get it to taste really good. It's just never really worked for me. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I might look into some of that high fat, no sugar. Ugh, it's processed. I'm not supposed to do processed stuff, but I think one way that could carb my chocolate craving would be to have the sugar-free chocolate Cool Whip. I wonder if you even added to regular Cool Whip just a little bit of the cocoa powder, if it would taste bitter or if it would taste sweet, because it automatically has the sweeteners in there. And then that's a possibility. Of course, there's also sugar-free Jello, right? I could do sugar-free chocolate Jello. Maybe I should look into that too. There's options out there. We have P3 options, people. If you're on P3, share with me. What are you doing? All right. Again, those are all processed foods. You're not supposed to have any of those, but uh, you know, I never do the diet to the letter of the law. All right. Love to you all. Happy dieting. Bye.